Good afternoon and welcome to Wintergreen Studios virtual land Art BioBlitz. You are at the Mukbang with Rena Upitis. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jess Pilo and I am the project coordinator at Wintergreen Studios and I'm your tech support on the call today. And now I'd like to pass it over to Monica Capavilla, the program director at Wintergreen Studios, who will introduce Rena.
Hello, friends. Welcome to our first mukbang. When I first said this idea to have a lunch with Rena, and I said the word mukbang, and she's like, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, it's just a lunch together where we can sit and chat and talk about things and ask questions." So here we are. So I am Monica Capavilla. I'm the program director at Wintergreen Studios. And today's video host, I'll be kind of moderating the question and answer or filling in the blank space if there aren't any questions and chatting. So bear with me as I try and figure this all out. But I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Rena Upitis, who is a fantastic mentor and a wonderful person and just kind of the brains behind Wintergreen Studios. So she's the founder and executive director of Wintergreen. She is also a professor of education at Queen's University. Rena's research and curriculum projects have explored teacher, artist, and student transformation through the arts. Rena is a timber frame carpenter and has a small design practice specializing in ecologically sensitive designs and materials for residents and retreats. Her current research explores ways that students can develop ecological habits of mind through arts, explorations, and web-based portfolio tools. So welcome, Rena. How are you doing today?
Well, as you know, because we've been on these calls all morning, I'm fine. And like you, when you asked me to do this and I said, what's a mukbang? I tried that out on my family too. And Jay, the father of our children, was the one who said, what's that? I don't know what that is. And my daughter said, oh yeah, of course. That's where you eat your lunch and chat with people. Of course. And she's 19. But being the researcher that I am, I thought I would actually see if I could find out anything about the origins of this practice. Apparently, this is a practice that started in, I don't know, 2010 or so in South Korea, and it's actually fairly hideous. So what people do is they eat large quantities of food while they're broadcasting live. I don't think there's a lot of discussion. And, often it's not food that we would want to eat. Like, I'm going to just go right out there and say it. Sometimes it's fast food by companies that support donations to suspect political causes in the States. So I will not be eating Taco Bell, but I am eating a wonderful meal, the Buddha bowls that feature in our cookbook and we often serve at Wintergreen. And the reason I have this wonderful meal is because Monica trotted over and gave it to me this morning in contactless delivery, saying, do you have anything to eat for lunch? So I'm grateful to Monica for my beautiful Buddha bowl lunch. I'm going to see if you can see it. Yes, you can. It's all veggies and grains and a gorgeous avocado flour on top. And the idea of eating in front of people on the screen is actually abhorrent to me. So I will have like small little bites in between discussion and questions because I am hungry, it turns out. And I would also just like to say that eating good food at Wintergreen is something that we really value. And Monica and I have spent hundreds of hours in the kitchen there and created recipes that we truly love. And many of them in our new cookbook, which is just coming out now. I've got the proof copy in my hand right here. Many of those recipes include ways of serving wild edibles, and especially edibles that are plants that are invasive and ones that we don't necessarily want to propagate. So it's super fun, and I encourage you to grab a copy at some point. So I'm going to stop talking. My thought is that if somebody wants to ask me something, I will take a bite so I can chat and eat in a not quite mukbang way, but hopefully not disgusting either. So go, ask.
I would also encourage everybody else, take this as we're just sitting down to eat lunch together. If anybody is interested in starting their own video so we can all see each other maybe. Hi, Peter.
Oh, Peter's waving. Hello, Peter. It's so nice to see you. Okay, I have to say that Peter has been to the real live Land Art BioBlitz and taught me the difference between grasses and, is it rushes?
Sedges.
Sedges and grasses. You see, he needs to come back again and teach me again because I've forgotten the word sedges. Now I remember the whole thing. Sedges have edges, and grasses don't. So anyway, nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
I don't know how many of you who are here at this lunch have used the iNaturalist app that the Canadian Wildlife Federation introduced us to, but I am just loving going out with this thing. And at first I thought we would have no species counted this year, and now I'm thinking we're going to actually exceed our usual numbers. So it's totally fun. And it's actually not something we can do in the moment at Wintergreen because we don't have Wi-Fi at Wintergreen. So, so we can get outdoors. It's just different.
I have to say, I see questions coming in, but I have to say, I spent half an hour on my walk this morning IDing, which is unheard of because usually as an organizer of this event, you don't get the opportunity to actually go out and do any of the species identification. So what a special treat that was. And I'm so excited to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So a few questions coming in. Consuelo, and actually, Rena, this is my Auntie Consuelo and my Nina in the video down here.
Oh.
Who I've talked about so many times. So Consuelo asks, where did you get your inspiration for shipping container building? I see she's done a little bit of poking around on the website.
Good question. So shipping containers is a little different than the other forms of building that we have at Wintergreen. We have straw bale buildings and cordwood buildings and all sorts of ways of creating an environment using found materials that are local to the area. So when we were building the lodge, for example, a farmer who lives down the road grew the hay that became the straw for the straw bale lodge and delivered it a year later. So it's local building materials. And the shipping containers are similar in that many of them, after they've been used, are disposed of. So we are getting an 8 by 40 shipping container that we're going to use to create a shed for our bee stuff. We have an apiary at Wintergreen, and also to create a workshop space for helping people learn about bees and other outdoor activities. Hopefully we'll be able to do that live next year for the BioBlitz. So it was just a matter of what's another way I can do building that is sustainable and maybe a little more accessible to people who can't imagine building with straw or building with cordwood. And there are magnificent examples of shipping container buildings if you Google it on the web. Fabulous stuff.
Timothy asks, how can I get the cookbook?
Well, this is a great moment to share my screen. I will pull up the Wintergreen website. You can order the book from the press, which is right here in the middle of the menu bar. And our titles appear below. And at the moment, Cooking at Wintergreen is one of the featured titles. So you just click on it and we'll give you all the information you need. And Monica, not some unknown person, but the true Monica is going to ship it to you when you give her your mailing address. And if you're in Kingston, she'll actually deliver it to you in a contactless way. And I saw somebody asking about whether you can put the dandelion flowers in the dandelion omelet as one of the other questions. And yes, you can. They're sweet and they're kind of, I don't know how to describe them. They're sweet. They're really yummy. Monica can attest to that because we made it one day when we were. We totally made it. And under our events page, which you must have gone to, I guess, to get to this BioBlitz, we've got a number of videos on wild edibles, and one of them is the dandelion, this one right here, and also on garlic mustard, which is horribly invasive. And Peter, you'll be happy to know we do have wild leeks, but we've been incredibly diligent about making sure that they're harvested responsibly.
I'm battling with the garlic mustard from my neighbors continuously.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get it under control unless you eat it.
Yeah.
And then you have to plant something that does well because of the disturbed soil. The garlic mustard just loves it. So we've been enjoying a pesto that takes large quantities of garlic mustard.
This one's from Diane, which happens to be my mother. She asked if she can use the flower stem in this meal. So I think the actual stalk.
It was the flowers.
The flower, the leaves, the stem.
Right. So the flower stems are edible. And some people wonder whether they have something about them that isn't healthy, but apparently that's not the case. I've read fairly extensively about it. I've never actually used the stems except by accident. When I've been cutting off a flower or cutting the leaves and just the stem, ends up in there. But on the video, we have a few stems that landed in there, and they are beautiful. They're sort of a reddish color. So if for nothing else, they're lovely to look at, and they didn't seem to cause any trouble in terms of the flavor of the omelet. Monica and I also made this one, and we thought it was yummy.
I do have a question. What is going to be your next wild edible?
Oh, lilac blossoms. I'm trying to do wild edibles as they appear in the season. And lilacs are, again, one of those plants that we see everywhere and people can easily recognize. We've been mindful to pick plants that are unlikely to be mistaken. We don't want anybody to pick something and eat it and come to some harm. And so the lilac blossoms are being, right at this very moment, they're in a dark spot in my house and they're turning into a lilac cordial. And when the BioBlitz is over, we will celebrate by pouring some of it on ice cream or in a glass of lemonade or champagne or something. So it's sort of a syrupy flavor that kind of tastes like lilac smells, although the lilacs themselves are pretty bitter, the flowers. So that's the next one. Stinging nettles probably after that. And then I don't know. I'm still hoping to find a good patch of morel mushrooms. I've only found solitary ones and I won't harvest those.
Peter has a comment here that he found 2 places to buy wild leek seeds, Aiglon Indigo in Quebec or Prairie Moon in the US. I don't know if you wanted to speak more on that, Peter.
No, it just occurred to me that if anybody finds their patch of wild leeks dwindling, you can replenish it. So I just thought I would share it. That's
good to know because one of the reasons that wild leeks are so delicate is that they take forever to germinate. Can be up to 18 months for that seed to take hold, and it can be sometimes 5 to 7 years for a whole cycle of plants to do their cycle. As opposed to the garlic mustard, which I learned yesterday from the wild foragers, that those little seeds in those little white flowers can last for 100 years. You will never get rid of your garlic mustard, no matter how much pesto you make. Yeah. And how will somebody's asked how I'm going to harvest the lilac flower. Just taking it off at the stem and then taking the flowers off the stems. And when I started to do that, I thought it would take forever. I picked 20 flower heads, but it didn't really. It was sort of fun, and they smell so good. Like, it was lovely. So that's the harvesting, very simple. And I picked a variety of colors, some white, some deep purples, and some lighter mauve as well. I have a question. There's a somebody who's been on all morning, the Chacho family. Is that how you pronounce it? I'd love to hear what you thought about the Sandy Pines Rehabilitation Center for the Wild Creatures that get injured.
That was great watching, seeing all the animals that you have there and your help, and that's fabulous. The zip ties was very interesting, holding the shells together.
We're having a bit of trouble with your audio, but it's so great to see all of you there on the video, and I'm very happy to hear what you have to say about those animals.
And it's a whole family behind that screen.
It is a whole family.
All together.
We have a wintergreen story about the Sandy Pines. Last summer, one of the gray rat snakes that's been living at wintergreen in our smokehouse for many years developed an injury. And at first we thought it was a fungus that the gray rat snake can be susceptible to, but it turns out that it had actually been chomped on by a predator. So one of the friends of wintergreen, Kenny Ruland, took the snake to Sandy Pines, carefully wrapped in a flannel pillowcase from one of the cabins. And they had the snake for a month, and it completely healed. And just on Thursday, we saw the very same snake again, back in the usual spot where it always is. So I was really happy, not only that it survived, but that it was reintroduced back to its wintergreen home and overwintered and is clearly healthy. So we have a real affection for the work that they do at Sandy Pines. And by the way, I didn't know how long gray rat snakes could live. So I found out yesterday from the reptiles and amphibians session that they can live for 15 or 20 years, which is astonishing to me. No wonder they get so big.
2 questions. What is your favorite vegetarian recipe in the cookbook?
Buddha bowls.
Hands down.
Hands down. It's vegan too. So, and actually when we serve a lot of people with particular dietary requirements or needs, and it's the one meal that we've never had a problem serving, no matter what people's preferences are or what their medical requirements might be. And it's so good. I have to say, because I'm not doing a very good job of the eating part of this session, that my mouth is watering looking at this dish. But there's lots of vegetarian recipes in the cookbook. And in fact, we lean towards vegetarian, although we do have some fish and chicken and meat recipes. But yeah, I like them all. I really do. And they're seasonal. So we have a quinoa and sweet potato chili that we only make in the winter, because right now it wouldn't be as appealing. And the quinoa black bean burgers, those are really good too.
And I see Consuelo said that she's waiting for the garlic scapes to come up to make the crostini, which I don't think we made last year. And because it's only a spring thing, if you miss out on it, you miss out on it, right? That's very seasonal.
There's also a really nice dandelion leaf and garlic scape recipe that we're going to try this spring. And we should have scapes in a couple of weeks. So don't let them escape this year. That was my attempt at humor. You who know me know that, my children tell me, don't try to be funny, Mama. Just don't try.
We have another question. Actually, Timothy just said that he ordered the book. Wow. Thanks, Timothy. Oh, okay. Consuelo asks, are you working on a 3rd cookbook?
You know what, Monica? You aren't going to believe it, but I thought about it this morning.
I'm sure you did.
So I wasn't going to.
It's not getting the recipes. It's putting it all together.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. But we should do one just on wild edibles.
Oh my gosh, sure.
Yeah. But not this year. So whoever asked about the 3rd cookbook, not this year, but you can give the 2nd cookbook for presents and the holiday season this year.
She's ordered 6 of them.
So okay.
check out that proof. Can I have one more question here? Okay, specifically about Wintergreen. What's your favorite spot at Wintergreen Studios?
Oh, that's also a seasonal answer. At this time of year, it's the lake. We have a beautiful, beautiful lake that is quite private. There's Crown Land on one side, Wintergreen on the other, and then our lovely neighbor at Forest Farm, David Hahn, has a piece of land on the side. And it's warm to swim in. It's a glacier carved lake. So it's very deep in the middle. It's about 80 or 90 feet deep, and it's glorious, and there's no place I'd rather be. In the winter, it's the forest and roaming the lands, and frankly, it's kind of nice with no bugs and no bears for quite a few months. I think my favorite hiking is in the winter. We have snowshoes for everyone who comes to Wintergreen, and we have had some gorgeous winter walks. What other favorite place? The meadow. When I I didn't drive in, there was no road. When I first saw the land and hiked in from the main road to the meadow, when I arrived at the meadow, I felt like I had arrived home. And the screen backdrop that you're looking at is looking down to the pond at the end of the meadow. It is just the most lush and alive and friendly land. So that's an enduring place for me. And the buildings. I love the buildings. I love the human-made environment. But if you ask me my favorite spots, they will always be the ones outdoors.
Peter asks, how was your bird migration this spring?
How was the bird migration this spring? I don't know what that question means. Do you mean, do we have fewer, more, different species? I've seen it go bunting in its usual spot.
Nothing unusual, or
at Wintergreen. Nothing unusual that I can think of. I'm always aware of whether I hear a whippoorwill or not. When I first bought the land 30 years ago, the whippoorwills would keep you awake. And I heard one last year. I haven't heard one this year. I didn't hear one the year before. So it's a very sobering thing that some of the species that I associate with that land seem to be disappearing. Let me think about what other, it feels like the place is full of abundance this year. The plants are doing incredibly well. The bees, all of our bees, our domestic bees overwintered, which is very unusual. And the wild bees are like crazy. And I know you're not asking about bees, but I'm sort of putting them all together as the winged creatures and the pollinators, of course. I saw a hummingbird on Thursday, which is right on schedule. I've seen the herons, and loons. So the birds that I would expect to see by this time of year, I've seen and heard. You say no white-crowned sparrows for the first time ever. I don't know that we've seen any either. So it's different slightly, but not alarmingly, except for the whippoorwill, which breaks my heart. Just like to give a plug for the iNaturalist app again. We're thrilled with the support that we've had with the Canadian Wildlife Federation, and we are sorry not to be on the land, but there have been some new things that have happened this year as a result of going virtual that we will keep even when we are able to meet again in person. So yesterday we heard from a remarkable young man in Vancouver, the Teenagers, Hummingbirds and Bees Guide to Changing the World, and hallelujah, bring him on. But we would not have been able to do that if we'd been actually meeting at Wintergreen. So we're hoping that we will learn what works well in this virtual environment, and that we can incorporate some of the best of that with some of the best of what we do when we meet face to face.